A forum, non-traditional social work, is it for me? My name is Carrie Liu, Director of Professional Development and Alumni Relations. You are in for a very special evening, and we're excited that you could join us. We began this project because of the uncertain economy, the shrinking job market, and the desire to provide MSW students and alumni with a greater array of possible employment options. Alumnus Juan Macias over there, near the door, 2002, and I have been working on this project for the past 8 months or so to identify these non-traditional internships and jobs in organizations that may not ordinarily hire social workers. Our target areas were finance, insurance, and managed care, but we found so much more. Much to our surprise, our ideas were well received by industry leaders, and we learned a lot on what skills, knowledge, traits are essential to succeed in these non-traditional arenas. So tonight, we want to share them with you and to get your thoughts and ideas as well. As you can tell by the attendance tonight, this is timely and has generated a great deal of enthusiasm. A very talented panel tonight, all alums, imagine that, who will talk about what they do, how they landed these non-traditional jobs, and how work education has helped them succeed in their careers, what they see as important skills, and how one might transition into some of these non-traditional arenas. A focus/discussion group following the panel will allow you, students, alumni, faculty, and staff, the opportunity to learn from each other and how we can move forward in this new territory. All this would not have been possible without the vision of Dean Flynn. It was her idea. Thank you, Dean Flynn, for having the confidence in Juan and I to provide leadership in this very important endeavor. I give you Dean Flynn.
Well, welcome. It's wonderful to see interest. I also want to thank Juan Macias and Carrie Liu for being the first to take an unconventional job. There are relatively few schools of social work across the country that actually have any person that's designated as a career counselor. And those people are usually very effective at giving advice about how to find traditional jobs in child welfare, mental health clinics, and schools, and the usual places that social workers seek employment. However, we gave Carrie Liu a portfolio no one else has, and that was to go where no one has gone before, so to speak, to present the possibility to some very surprised institutions that social workers might actually assist them in their mission, and then to create opportunities for our graduates. I'm tremendously impressed with what they've done. I need to tell you that this is just a luxury as far as I'm not an experiment. You know that the states across the country, especially in California, are in a state, are tremendously challenged in terms of revenues, falling revenues. In which we work. Normally social workers are the last to go, not the first to go when there are cutbacks, but nonetheless I think we can expect to see a contraction in government services rather than expansion, and so there's a pinch. It's not going to be as easy to find employment in these areas. It's true that coming from USC in Los Angeles puts you at the front of the line. We have more of our alums running more programs than any of the other institutions, but it's still going to be a pinch. There is tremendous growth in other sectors of the economy. not tremendous, but there is growth. And we should be looking for areas that are growing, because actually there are vulnerable populations everywhere where we can serve with our talents. We're also experiencing a lot more competition from allied professions, and it means that we have to create not just the same places where we have always been, but new places. So, you have an opportunity tonight to look at a broader palette of opportunities, and you'll be very surprised at what you hear. And you may, I hope, begin to rethink how you can use your talents and how you can use what you have learned here or at USC. Some of these positions, by the way, may begin with internships, or they may begin with summer opportunities that are temporary because social workers have not been employed in these settings, and your mettle has to be tested. It's a real challenge to be the first. That's what it means when we say we're going into non-traditional areas. Theoretically, you've been trained to be first at USC. I hope that's true. And I hope that what we can do, if some of you are really able to pursue the opportunities as they open up and as they arise here, I hope we can provide some support and follow-up for you. And you should talk with Carrie Lou about what is it that we could do if you begin to explore these unconventional opportunities, these non-traditional opportunities. You will be somewhat isolated. If you're the first, that means there's nobody in front of you, and sometimes there's nobody around you. So it pays to have some backup, it pays to have some feedback, it pays to have some support. And so let us keep in touch with you as you explore things, and let us see what we can do to make you successful and famous. We like that, you like that. That means good salaries, that means more room for more social workers. We're already innovating in the school through the new specialization in military social work that will bring social workers into positions where they have not previously been employed, or where they have been only marginally employed. But this is just the beginning. So I want to thank you again, both Juan and Carrie, for being brave, for being the first, for having a whole bunch of really interesting conversations. Someday you should talk to Carrie Lou about the responses that she's gotten. But most of all, for creating a vision of what we can do as a profession. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Dean Flynn. So, we thought we would share with you what we've been working on for the past 8 months. As you heard, it was really this amorphous kind of project that we really didn't know how to start. So we started kind of like by talking about some of the goals and some of the 3 targeted areas, the finance, insurance, and managed care. We were kind of a little scared about that given the times of the economy. You know, a lot of people in the finance industry were being laid off by the thousands, and so we're coming up with this new idea. So we started out by identifying some of the positions in some of these non-traditional industries that could be filled by some of the MSWs, not traditionally held by MSWs. So they're positions, but people didn't really realize that we had skills, we had transferable skills that could be utilized to the benefit of the organization, thereby increasing some of the opportunities for internships and jobs. We started out looking for jobs, but it turned out that the internships were more possible at this time, given this economy. So that's kind of one of the roads we're taking, as well as pursuing jobs at the same time. Another goal, we had to kind of increase some of the non-traditional opportunities, like increase awareness at the USC School of Social Work, because this is new territory again for faculty and staff and students and alumni, and so this is one of our kind of endeavors to kind of start increasing awareness and spreading the word. And so once we get some of these internships, and I'll share with you in a little bit about some of these ones that we have some in draft form, we're going to be very involved in selecting who these candidates are. So as you can imagine, if we hand-selected them and they weren't good, we'd be in a lot of trouble to the profession as well as kind of our project. So these are some of the things that we've been thinking about. Okay. And we also started out, and we have a handout in the back. It's called MSW Snapshot that we've created. We created like tons and tons of documents. And this is one of the ones that we leave behind with employers that talks a little bit about social work. It talks a lot about the transferable skills. We use a lot of business terminology. So for example, the first one, practically identify and triage customer service and stakeholder problems, escalate the issues to the appropriate channels, then mobilize internal and external resources to resolve them. Well, that sounds like a business plan, right? That really means problem solving, and we do that, right? Okay. The second one, orchestrate multi-departmental efforts to resolve specific issues, and so on and so on. Well, that's collaboration, and we do that. Third one, utilize the relationship broker skills to serve as an organizational interface between these different components. Well, that's leveraging relationships and resources, and we do that, right? Okay, so now that you have a little flavor of some of that, we can go on and on about some of these transferable skills, and the handout that we have actually lists these. And we hope that you use these. I think as social workers, sometimes we're not that good at selling ourselves. We're not that good at marketing our skills and talking about what we could do and how we could make the organization more effective, right? So we want to kind of practice that. We ask that you use some of this, and if you need help, we want to keep the conversation going, and I'll share with you later, but we created a LinkedIn profile so that we could keep the conversation going. Because we know that a lot of you have a lot of experience. Some of you have come from careers previously in some of these areas, in other areas that could add and bring to the table. And some of you have special skills, and some of you are just plain old interested but could bring a lot. So we need to kind of keep this conversation going. So I don't need to read this to you. You'll have that on that handout, but this is pretty much coaching individuals, assisting teams and organizations, et cetera, et cetera. So we met probably with about 70 company representatives, had numerous telephone conferences. Some of the companies that we met in the finance area is Comerica Bank, Union Bank, Priority Banking, and we found that in the finance industry, the private wealth clients were kind of the most promising in that area. For example, we have the first approved internship through Wells Fargo Elder Care Services, and they only have 15 internships in the country, so they're giving one slot to us. So we're going to be working very closely with the students and trying to select who this individual is. And so I'll share with you a little bit more of what's important in that area. What else? City National Bank, Bank of America, and there's a Center for Financial Social Work, and you should check out that link. Do a Google search because there's a really interesting, I believe she's a social worker, and she works out of Maryland. In the insurance industry, MetLife Mature Market Institute, Strategic Financial Group, and so on and so on. We met with someone with the State of California Department of Insurance Fraud Division. In managed care, Magellan Behavioral Health Care, Prototypes, Kaiser. And when you think of Kaiser, some of you are thinking of some of the traditional social work jobs. But we have this one possibility right now that we're working with in having an internship, and several interns, in fact, to working with unit-based teams, working with labor management. And so we're just trying to work out the whole kind of field experience as far as supervision and all that kind of stuff at this point. Also with Altimed. And some of the miscellaneous companies in the community developed corporate social responsibility areas is Target Corporation, and you'll hear from Florence Chung today, Deloitte, Verizon, and a lot of our findings have turned us to healthcare and aging, and we do know that those are going to be two booming areas for employment in the future. In fact, today Juan was part of this panelist at the USC Career Fest, in which he sat on a panelist with economists, business people, I think it was accounting, et cetera, and they talked about healthcare. They talked about the baby boomers. They talked about how it's important to understand economics. They talked about it's important to have good writing skills. So these are all things that we're identifying and we're sharing with you because these are skills that you need to hone up on to be successful, I think, in any arena and part of your professional development. So some of the other aging healthcare, we actually have a draft internship proposal right now with AARP. And again, you know, if you're thinking of the traditional piece, this is kind of a non-traditional kind of job description. Partners in care, on and on and on. Oh, we came across some really interesting ones called NORCs, Naturally Occurring Retirement Communities, you know, which is kind of like different than some of the retirement communities that are made and created on purpose. These are naturally occurring ones. And I think that was the one that was at Park La Brea, and Jewish Family Services oversees it, and actually one of our alums is a part of that management team. So again, accredited home health, you'll hear from Neil today talking about his experiences there. And some more miscellaneous organizational development with the interchange group, the Marshall Executive Education. So you see we could go on and on with the different kind of companies and departments that we've met with, that we've talked to. It's funny because Juan and I, sometimes we feel like we're a sales team. You know, we're really going out kind of selling the social work profession, right? And selling what we've been trained to do. And sometimes we go out of there and we look at each other and we're high-fiving each other because we're surprised that people are receptive. And also today in that panel, they were talking about it's important to hone up on some of the softer skills. And these are people, again, from business, people, again, from accounting, et cetera. So they're seeing that those skills are important. And also you'll hear from Margot today from the USC Business and Society Lab, which is really, really a new program, and she's one of our recent grads, and she has a lot of interesting things to share with you. More miscellaneous, Center for Nonprofit Management, some kind of COPA-related assembly field representative works. We've just talked to, on and on. We've talked to all the career development departments on campus, other faculty, et cetera. And so these are some of the pending job descriptions. I talked to you a little bit about Wells Fargo. That's approved, and we were happy about that, right, Dean Flynn? Some of the pending ones, Comerica in the community development area, Union Bank, Verizon, Government External Affairs, et cetera, Target, USC Employee Recruitment Services. Professor Margarita Artavia is working with that and getting an internship there. And again, accredited home health. So these are on different stages of conversation. Some are more developed than others, but we're trying to see if some of these would be possible for the next fall. Here's some more pending ones. The Kaiser I spoke to you about, Ultimed. And some of these, we have about 3, including Ultimed, the Alliance for Children's Rights, and Prototypes. And we had conversations about doing a leadership track and talking about the intern would even stay in the department and go through, follow or shadow the CEO, the business department, HR, the clinical department, so they would get all kinds of training, or even possibly move from agency to agency and shadowing the CEO. So these are all kinds of conversations that we're having, and we're trying to see where it fits in kind of our curriculum and how it fits. And with some of these, well, almost everybody we're asking for student stipends. We're kind of like expecting it. Of course, in some of these nonprofit settings right now, it's not possible, but we're asking for student stipends from $6,000 to $8,000. And actually, some are saying, okay, they're not really blinking. So we, again, me and Juan come out of there and we're high-fiving each other. So for some of these corporations that don't have MSWs on site, we're asking for an external field instructor fee of $3,000 for the year. And that's a whole other model that we're trying to work out and figure out. But it's a model that we're trying to emulate from the military social work program. Okay? So we come to the point where we have some ideas and we're just trying to find out where some of this fits, if it fits in the curriculum at all, and how we could share this information with alums and with students. And what we heard time and time again is the foundational business skills, that was critical. Okay? How to read a balance sheet, how to read a profit loss statement, just the basic business acumen, marketing. You know, even if you're a clinician and you're running a program, You need to know how to market your program, right? You need to know how to market your agency, etc. So those are some basic things. The leadership, the management development piece. We know that our graduates typically get promoted in the next 2 to 3 years after they graduate. And so where do they get that management kind of, skills? We have the leadership course, but we need to kind of, I think, supplement that in that way. So these are all conversations that we're starting to have and just looking at where it could fit. Strategic planning and data analysis. Social enterprise. There's the Society and Business Lab course that Margot might touch upon later when she talks. Maybe it could be delivered in seminars, maybe an elective, maybe a certification program, maybe continuing ed. Right now it's all up in the air, but again, we wanted to share with you what we found out so far and what were some of the key elements that have been told to us from time and time again. And these are some of the examples of non-traditional jobs held by MSWs. You'll listen to Florence later on, you'll listen to Margot and Prototypes, Cassandra, Accredited Home Health, Neil, and Caltech, April's here, and Deloitte. Mark's not here because he's in India. But these are some of our graduates, actually. Center for Nonprofit Management, she's the CEO and Director of Consulting. There's a congresswoman in the 9th District. California State Auditor's Department, Laura Chick is one of our alums. The Detroit Lions football team and is an MSW. Isn't that interesting? Senior Director of Player Development. I think they're trying to keep those Detroit Lions in line. NBA Sports League, the VP of Security. So these are really interesting, I think, opportunities. In fact, one of our field faculty said, "Oh, if it's sports, I'm on it." So he definitely wants to follow that one. So in this project, we've heard about so many other things that people are also interested in pursuing. So they're on our long list to do. We're still trying to focus and drill down on some of the priorities, but they're on our list. We're keeping a running list. AARP, California State Assembly, United States Senate, etc. State of California Inspector General. Oh, I think that's Laura Chick, our alum right there. So next steps, we're going to continue to meet with industries and shape this project, and we welcome your input. We want to develop and solidify some of these internships and job descriptions, develop the leadership track a little bit more. We've been incorporating some of these findings into our career development workshops that we do for students. And we're exploring other industries, such as elder law, some of the public utilities, sports, entertainment. We had a conversation the other day with veterinary social work, which is really big at University of Pennsylvania. And we know there's a lot of animal lovers out there. And so, the pet industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so there's a lot of interest in that. And we hope in all this is to hopefully inform curriculum in some way so that it's a part of the curriculum so that you do have some of these skills when you get out there. And maybe you're not interested in a traditional, non-traditional job at this point, but you might be down the line. A lot of students and recent grads are kind of focusing on their first 2 to 3 years. I want to get licensed, I want to do that. But think down the line, your career trajectory, where you're going to be in the next 5 years, 3 to 5 years, Think of where you want to go and think of the things you need to add to your portfolio. So we want to keep the conversation going. We created a LinkedIn profile. I'm proud of myself for that. It's called the USC Non-Traditional Social Work. There's a link, but I think you could just search for that group and you'll find it. And again, if some of you have non-traditional jobs or experience in your past, other kinds of skills that could add to this, please join this and let's keep the conversation going so we know what we're going to do next. Okay? Thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce my partner in crime, Juan Macias, who is an alumnus from 2002, who's going to introduce to you our esteemed panelists for this evening.
Thank you, Carrie. Wow, isn't this exciting? Non-traditional social work. I am very appreciative to be on this project. It's cutting edge, and being on this panel today for the Career Fest and talking to different disciplines and having other disciplines be on the panel, everybody was saying the same thing: the importance of students and alums being able to showcase their skills. To showcase not only the skills that are within their disciplines, but skills like communication skills, skills like interpersonal skills. Those are all the skills that we as social workers, have. So definitely we have great skills in being on this project. We're able to let employers know that we can do non-traditional things too, and we can do the same things that other disciplines do as well. So we are here to have some talk to our panelists, right? To talk to our alums. And what I wanted to do first, I wanted to see if all of our panelists can come up and sit, please. Thank you. So the other thing I wanted to mention, as well as the panelists are getting situated, I think we're talking about internships, and we're talking about educating staff, faculty, and current students, but also for the alums who are here. Everybody who's alum, raise your hand. Right, woo, yeah. Speaking of that, actually, I didn't even introduce myself. I'm an alum myself. I graduated in 2002 with a COPA concentration, and I worked in clinical social work at a hospital at St. Joseph's Medical Center, and before that I worked for about 4.5 years at a community mental health agency working on multisystemic therapy, intensive juvenile, working with juveniles and delinquents and their families intensively. And now I'm working on my own and working on this project, so I'm pretty excited to be here. So I wanted to thank Carrie and Dean Flynn as well for her vision. So thank you all for being here. All of you and our panelists as well. And I wanted to, before I kind of wanted to give a little bit of information on how the panel is going to go. So ahead of time, we sent some questions to our panelists. And some questions such as describe your current organization, your position, tell us about how and why you got into non-traditional social work, and also what might be a typical day, what are some critical skills or traits that you need to be able to thrive in a non-traditional environment. We also asked them, how does your social work degree help you in your non-traditional job? Do you still feel that connection? Because that's another question that we get. When we're talking to employers, a lot of times they say, well, if you have a social worker who's coming in to maybe serve a particular population or do a particular type of job, how are they going to be able to convince me that they're not really a hiring risk, that they really want this job that's non-traditional? So the panelists hopefully will be able to give a little bit of understanding on how they make that connection and how they feel that they're still making a difference in the workplaces that they're working at, and also some strategies that all of us can take from their experience if we want to pursue a non-traditional job. So thank you all. And the way we're going to do it, and we decided to, instead of having the panel stay, this was actually a great suggestion from Florence, instead of having each panelist talk, because we are limited on microphones, then I will introduce the panelist. I will give their bio, give some information on their background, then they will come up and speak, then they will come back and sit down, and then we will go from there. They're going to speak for about 9 minutes. Just in the minute, for the sake of time, I'm going to have some time. Minute, 3 minutes, the countdown. Hopefully it's not the final countdown, right? So after that, we're going to have some questions and answers, and we're going to be able to have a discussion as well, so have some comments, questions that you might have for the panelists, questions that you might have for Carrie Lou and I. So let's go ahead and get started. So I wanted to introduce our first panelist, Florence Chung. Florence Chung is the Senior Specialist of Government and Community Partnerships for Target Corporation. Her responsibilities include building strategic partnerships with law enforcement agencies, government, and community organizations to advance Target's role in building safer communities. and works hard not to try to give too much of her paycheck back to her employer by over-shopping at Target, of course. Florence has responsibility over 2 regions spanning California to Florida and builds programs and makes grants to impact public safety. She serves on the board of directors of the Los Angeles Regional Crime Stoppers and has worked within the nonprofit world, city government, and corporate world, all in which social work skills have come in very handy. And Florence is proud to be a graduate of the USC MSW class of 2004 and is also a COPA concentration. And let's hear it for Florence.
Thank you, Juan. Good evening, everyone. My name is Florence Chung. I am so happy to be here. Although I graduated from UCLA for undergrad, I was very, very happy to be, did I hear a boo? Oh my God. Very, very happy to be here at USC. And have graduated from this great program. So what I thought I'd do is just kind of start from the beginning, what my career journey looked like post-graduation from USC, and kind of take you through my thought process in how I built my career up till now. So I graduated with a COPA degree, and so after graduation I thought, you know, I want the traditional COPA job. I want to run a youth program for a social service agency or for a nonprofit organization. So I searched, and I searched for months and months, and I had a difficult time finding the job that I wanted running youth programs because 2 reasons. One, either those jobs were a few years away from the experience level that I was at coming straight out of grad school, or number 2, the salary level was at the same level as where I was, you know, a couple years before I even went to grad school. So because of my wonderful USC student loan, I couldn't afford to take certain jobs. And I share that only to be completely candid and honest and real, because some of you may be in that situation as well. So it was a little difficult. But because after 4 months, through a referral, I took a job in the corporate environment. I worked for Countrywide, and as you all know, that company no longer exists. But I was in their National Multicultural Markets Division, and I was a project manager for the EVP there, and working on projects to provide services and resources to lower-income families and minority groups so that they can realize their dream of home ownership. And that was my justification for being okay with being in a corporate environment. I said, at least I'm helping the community, although it's for a mortgage company. So as you can see, I did have those thoughts of, hey, I graduated with a social work degree, but I'm in a corporate environment, kind of on this non-traditional path. And that first job was more of by default. But I did learn a lot, and I have to say, I used my social work clinical skills, though I was COPA, clinical skills every day. And this is how. I was it wasn't part of my job description, but I was asked to manage relationship dynamics between the EVP and her VPs. So the department soon started kind of looking towards me to be the peacemaker, the mitigator, just kind of the mediator within the department. And I think they recognized that social work skills had a place even in that corporate environment. So, but it was a desk job. So after a year, I realized I didn't like the job. It wasn't me. And so I took on another job with the city of Gardena. So working for the city, though, I absolutely loved it. So my job there was to build partnerships between the city government and the business community. There, I had an opportunity to do some legislative work, build programs, and manage projects to improve the quality of life for the residents and the business community. And it was a fantastic experience. If you ever have a chance to work for a local city government, you'll find that whatever you do, you can see the direct impact because your world is one city. So if you're building a project or a program in that microsphere, you can see the direct result, and that was gratifying for me. As one of my projects, I had the opportunity to build a nonprofit organization called the Gardena Police Foundation in partnership with the businesses in the city, and we recruited the Target Corporation to join our board of directors. And several months later, then Target recruited me over to the company, and so it was a nice exchange there. So Target, so what's a social worker doing working for a company that sells toilet paper and Converse sneakers, right? First of all, let me just back up and say Target is a company that is very, very committed to the community. We give 5% of our income to the communities we serve to support education, social services, and the arts, and volunteerism. And in today's dollars, that equals $3 million a week. And so if you never knew, please continue to shop at Target, because the more you shop, the more we give. So. Now, we also have a public safety partnership program, and that's where I landed, and my job is to build relationships with law enforcement agencies and nonprofits that are related to crime prevention and public safety, so that Target can play a role in helping to create safer communities. Now, I would say my typical day comprises of, aside from emails and conference calls, building new programs in partnership with various law enforcement agencies across the country. I spend time assessing the strategic needs of a given community in terms of public safety. Spend a lot of time identifying who the key influencers are within a given community, and then go after them. Try to build relationships with them, so that I can, as a representative of the company, I can look for opportunities where the company can engage with the community. So I would say in that line of work, I've been able to provide a lot of consulting and training to Target managers on how to connect with the community, how to connect with nonprofit organizations and law enforcement agencies, because Target managers, they know how to manage logistics and the back room. They know how to sell stuff, but do they know how to connect with the community? Do they know what the community's needs are in order to be a good steward of the corporate resources to distribute them in a strategic and effective way? The answer most of the time is no, and that's where I step in. So I would say I use the principles of empowering others, because I'm out there training them all the time to go out and connect with the community. Also, I would say the concept of community organizing and community outreach, that's what I do on a daily basis. I also travel as part of the job and get to work with a lot of different police agencies, but I would say that my most favorite part of the job is to be able to attend community events that our stores put on, to attend press conferences where we're launching something new, or attend meetings with nonprofit organizations to see if there is an intersect between the nonprofit sector and the private sector. And that, I think, for me, has been probably the most rewarding part of the job. So if any of you here are interested in this line of work, I would say, as you're doing a job search, look for keywords such as community relations, government affairs, public affairs, or external relations. Now, every major company has an office or a team or a department that plays this role. Nowadays, corporate social responsibility, that trend is on the rise, which means there is a big need or a big opportunity within that industry. So for me, I've seen that social workers can easily transfer into this field. Now, many of you may know already, but consumers have a big, or hold our Fortune 500 companies up to a higher standard these days, asking them to hold up to responsible business practices and give to the community, and so corporate social responsibility is up. Social workers can plug right in because, one, we have an understanding of the world of nonprofits and foundations and grant making. We, especially COPA grads, are familiar with the principles of community organizing and community outreach, as I mentioned before. And I think social workers generally have good personal people skills. So those are all things that will make you successful in the corporate social responsibility industry. So I would say there are two things that I would throw out there. If you're considering a career in non-social work, non-traditional social work, a lot of faux pas today, then there are two things I would leave you with. One, the importance of networking, because sometimes the MSW initials at the end of your name may not catch, will most likely not catch employers' attention because you're competing with MBAs and community PR types of folks. So what is important is networking, people who see who you know and make sure people know you, because that's the way to get into this field. Number two, take an inventory of your skills, because if you're not selling your MSW degree necessarily, then you need to sell your skill sets. And you'll be surprised how much this MSW program here at USC has played a part in developing such marketable skills in the business realm. I've found that to be true. So I would say if there's something I can leave you with, market your skills rather than, and if the MSW piece doesn't work because it's a non-traditional setting, then of course sell the special skills, the unique skills that the program has given you. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. Definitely, as we're meeting with the employers on this project, Karen and I keep on hearing the same thing. How can we identify the transferable skills that we can bring as social workers and connect the dots or find the intersect using, I like that word, Florence, the intersect, and show that to the employer because they may not know what a social worker is. In fact, oftentimes they don't really know what a social worker is. So thank you very much, Florence. So our next panelist is Margot Helvey. And Margot Helvey is the Associate Director of the Society and Business Lab here at USC at the Marshall School of Business. She has a unique dual degree in business and social work. So she has an MSW and she also has an MBA. She was a dual degree when she was here. From the University of Southern California, which has equipped her to facilitate strategic collaborations between corporate and community sectors. Integrating society and business in her career, Margot's experience has ranged from mental health counseling at the Salvation Army to community investment at Deloitte. Before moving to Los Angeles, Margot worked with the Foundation for Community Empowerment in a program funded by the Federal Compassion Capital Grant to train nonprofit executives in capacity building. In the academic setting, Margot led initiatives for socially responsible business, including program proposals for social innovation, ethics education, and diversity and inclusion training for MBA students, as well as coordinated MBA student volunteer events for junior achievement and Special Olympics of Southern California. She was a board member of Marshall Net Impact and Challenge for Charity, and Margot received her BA from the University of Virginia. Let's give a warm welcome to Margot Helvey.
Hello. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about my current job, but more about the career path that I'm on. I currently work in a university setting, but I did not set out to work in a university as an industry. It just happens to be the right fit for what I want to do now, but I would like to identify myself as a social entrepreneur in life. And so here at the university, I helped co-found the Society and Business Lab, and the way that came about was in my final year of my MBA MSW degree. I had been knocking down the door of the business school dean ever since I got there to ask for more courses or more opportunities that integrated business and social impact. And it just so happened that in the last semester, before I was about to graduate, the powers that be in the development office decided it was time to start a center at the business school on integrating society and business. And they hired Adlai Wortman as the director. Adlai has a background in Wall Street, Wharton MBA, and then he ran Chrysalis, which is a nonprofit homeless agency on Skid Row, for 7 years. So he had a great mix of business and nonprofit. They hired him to come run the lab, and I was so excited to find out that this was happening at Marshall, and I was just so glad for that other students were going to have these opportunities that I never had. And then I got an email the next day saying, the dean says I should meet with you. So Adlai was new on campus, and I just said, oh my gosh, let me tell you exactly what needs to happen here, because I've been here for 3 years and I know what we need. And he said, great, I'll hire you when you graduate. So he did. And that's just an example. It's actually the it's the epitome of how my career has worked out so far, which is that none of the internships or jobs I've ever had existed before I had them, which is why I guess there's a running theme of entrepreneurship in my life. And so I like to think of myself more as a mission-driven person. I know that I'm passionate about certain issues and I want to see solutions to social problems, but I also know that my mind works in a strategic way, in a more business-like way. And so I just know those two things, and I'm always looking for ways to combine them. So I'll just tell you my story if it helps to illuminate any ideas. I really became passionate about community development work when I was in college and did some service trips over spring break to Jackson, Mississippi and Atlanta, working with community development organizations. And I kept thinking to myself that I might be a business person, so I interned with Ernst & Young over the summer, and it was horrible. And then I interned, what was the other one I did? Oh, I don't know. But anything that touched on business, I took some business classes in the undergrad degree. I was like, ew, no. And then it occurred to me that I wasn't motivated by profit, much to my dad's dismay. I just wasn't motivated by profit, but I thought like a business person, and that's when it occurred to me that this whole world of nonprofit management, or having a mission that you're driving towards, but you're still using business skills and business models to get there, made sense to me. So I finished a good traditional BA degree and then went back thinking I would get my MBA, and then I found this great dual degree program. And while I was in the dual degree program, my first summer internship in the business school side was with Deloitte in their community relations office, very similar to the Target example. CSR, corporate social responsibility, community outreach, all that kind of stuff. That didn't exist. I was in the business school and I met with the career director there and I said, I kind of want to do this community stuff. And he was like, we don't have those jobs per se, but I'll make you my experiment, and if we can get you a job, this is really funny because I was in the non-traditional business career path and the non-traditional social work career path. So nobody knew what to do with me. So I just told them what I wanted, and then I started meeting people, and I used the USC network to get in the door to just have informational meetings with, I met with the Mattel Foundation and Deloitte and just all these people that I found in the intersection of business society, and told them what I was interested in. And especially when you're a student, you can meet with anybody. So it's a really great time to leverage that opportunity. And I met with these people, and I didn't know if anything would develop, and then just stayed in touch. When an email or a website would come along, I'd pass it on to my counterparts, and they'd start emailing back to me. So just stayed in touch, and sure enough, I also mentioned that I was willing to work part-time. And I think another lesson I've learned is just, especially early in your career, to be as flexible as possible, because opportunities are more important than a traditional, what you think of like salary benefits, piecing things together is totally fine. I mean, that's what I did. And so I worked half the summer with Deloitte, and they were downtown, and then it happened that the Marshall Development Office was also downtown, so I wanted to learn about fundraising. So I went to Deloitte in the morning, and then at lunch I walked to the Citibank building and worked at Marshall in the afternoon, and I just made those both up, and they were willing to take me part-time. So that's just one little lesson learned. I think that social entrepreneurship is a very hot field right now. So my keyword search for the evening is social enterprise, social entrepreneurship. Examples of those would be something like Tom's Shoes. That is a for-profit business with a social mission. So if you don't know what Tom's Shoes are, they're these kind of not necessarily totally cute shoes, but when you buy them, you're making a statement that for every pair you buy, another exact pair goes to someone in a developing country who doesn't have shoes. And the way this started was the guy who started it didn't say, oh, I really want to be in the apparel industry and maybe I'll start a shoe company and I'll get people to buy it by telling them it's socially responsible. No, he traveled the world and saw that there were so many countries where people didn't have shoes, and instead of starting a nonprofit or an NGO to solve the problem, he started a business. And so there's a lot of people out there that are right now thinking how business can impact social issues. And I'm going to make the connection to social work, but it's really easy in other fields. It's easy in social work, it's easy in the medical field, even in the legal field, to see how your skills can transfer to social issues. But business people are just coming around to how their skills can transfer to social issues. And I say that because these are great people to partner with right now. Make business connections, because what you bring to the table as a social worker is your ability to assess problems, especially social problems, to figure out how to quantify those problems. Because believe me, business people want to quantify the return on investment. If they're going to start saying they're going to put shoes on people's feet, they want to tell you for every dollar you spend, this is how many shoes we're putting on people's feet. And then to go even further to say, how is that really making an impact on people's lives? And in social work, we spend a lot of time trying to think about how do you quantify something that seems otherwise unquantifiable. And so those measuring impact skills you bring are very important in the world of social enterprise right now. And the networking relationships, because in a lot of entrepreneurship, people need partners. You know, you've got the left brain side, the right brain side, and the other combinations of people that work together. And so I think this field of social entrepreneurship is more vital now than any other time, because in this economy, the people who will emerge are those who are looking for new and innovative solutions. So I personally don't look at my career path as what institution should I try to get into, but I look at what problem do I want to solve and what skills do I bring to the table, and how can I find the people who are trying to get there too and partner together to do that. So I can talk more about that in the Q&A if you want to know specific things, but we do a lot of this education here at the Society and Business Lab on social entrepreneurship, and we have a Lunch and Learn series, so if you're not a student, you can still come hear great speakers in this arena. Thank you.
Thank you, Margot. I'm hearing a couple of themes. I'm hearing networking. I'm hearing in both Florence and Margot, there's a term called passive job searching, which I guess you can infer what that means. It's basically you're not really looking for a job, but people are looking for you. And in both of their examples, what I gauge is those relationships. Florence being on that board, working with Target, or actually having Target on the board that you were working on. You know, Margot having that relationship and getting that email. Networking is very vitally, it's vital. It's very important. The other thing I hear in both of the jobs so far is that you can still carry the same MSW mission that we have, and we can utilize that in different settings. It doesn't have to necessarily be in an agency or in a traditional setting. So I think that's great, and of course informational interviews, which I'm always touting. So thank you very much for those. So I wanted to introduce our third panelist, Cassandra Locke. And Cassandra Locke is President and Chief Executive Officer for Prototypes, Centers for Innovation in Health, Mental Health, and Social Services. With a $20 million budget and nearly 300 staff members, Prototype's mission is to rebuild the lives of women, children, and communities impacted by substance abuse, mental illness, and domestic violence. Prior to assuming the role of President and CEO, Ms. Locke oversaw program operations for Prototypes as the Chief Program Officer. Ms. Locke came to Prototypes with an extensive background in both the clinical and management sides of mental health, substance abuse, and healthcare systems, and held senior level positions in some of the nation's largest organizations, including largest healthcare organizations, including Vice President of Intake for Inbound Call Centers for all of United Behavioral Health, and Vice President and Chief of Staff for the Chairman and CEO of Pacific Care Health Systems. Prior to joining Pacific Care, she worked as a clinical social worker for both Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, of course, and Providence St. Joseph Medical Center, where I used to work. Ms. Locke is a licensed clinical social worker with a bachelor's degree in social relations from the University of California, Riverside. She holds a master's degree in social work, of course, from USC, and a master's degree in business administration from Pepperdine University, Grazdio School of Business and Management. So she also has an MBA. And finally, Ms. Locke is regularly asked to speak at national conferences and give professional presentations on a variety of projects and topics. And we want to welcome Cassandra Locke.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me tonight. I was thinking about this earlier today, that when Juan first asked me to do this, I've never actually really thought of myself as having a non-traditional social work job. And I think because everything I've done started with a very social work type job, and so kind of like what Florence did, I think it might be helpful to just kind of take you through my career path and some of my thought process. I was here, Neil and I were just laughing like we're the old people on the panel. I graduated from USC in '96, and I did the healthcare concentration, and have always had a passion for healthcare. I considered medical school, I considered law, but with a healthcare background or focus, and so healthcare has always been very, very important to me. I find it extremely interesting because our president and political environment always greatly influences the healthcare field. So I went and worked at hospitals as a social worker, and I became very frustrated because I think my mind works like probably the others on this panel at a much more strategic level. And I got frustrated when I was at these very large organizations, and some of the jobs that I knew I could go in there and do great things, you had to have an RN. And at one point I actually thought about going back and getting my nursing degree because I'm like, I want to move up in this organization, but I can't with my MSW. They're just not looking for that background. And so I ended up, I had a friend who, and again, networking is so critical, who worked at a company called Pacific Care Behavioral Health. She started telling me about her job, and I started thinking, I could do that. She was a licensed clinician taking crisis calls. Of course, I wasn't licensed, and so I spent the next year and a half getting my license so I could go to work there. And I got my license in the mail. Didn't pass it the first time, by the way. I had to retake it, so it took a really long time. It was when we still had the oral. And I got it in the mail. I sent my resume the same day, and I was interviewing there within a week. I just wanted to go work there. And when I went to the interview, I noticed, it's a call center, and there's all these frontline staff, but when you go down the executive hall, I was looking at the names on the door. They all had LCSWs, PsyD, there were psychiatrists, and I'm thinking, this is where I need to be, because I'll have an opportunity to have a greater impact at a higher level. I was very fortunate. I got the job, and my first supervisor, a lot of the more senior level things she hated. And I credit a lot of my success to sheer luck. Like, I just was in the right place at the right time. So there would be these big presentations. She wouldn't want to do them, and she'd say, sure. So I got all this exposure to our CEO, to his bosses, to the salespeople, to our customers, and I started to really see the big picture of what this company could do. And from there, I just continued to move up. I got, Pacificare actually had a great position called Chief of Staff, where all of the senior leaders had a Chief of Staff. And so you got to work side by side with the CEO, with his team, used all of my social work skills trying to get people to get things done for the CEO when they had their whole list of complaints and other things that why they didn't want to do it. But I actually served in that role with two different leaders. One, the leader for Pacificare Behavioral Health, but then also with the chairman for the entire organization. And that really broadened my whole perspective. I then figured out, okay, if I go, I've had great success here at Pacificare, but if I just send my resume to someone, are they going to really take my MSW seriously? How do I market that? And I did decide to go back to school. I finished my MBA in 2006. I did the fully employed program, which I don't necessarily know that anyone needs to go get their MBA to get any of this stuff. I think it's more important that you get those skills. I think it's a different way of thinking, and I think you can certainly do that in more traditional settings. From there, I went through a merger and acquisition. I got a job in a new company, United Healthcare, and then was contacted actually by a headhunter for my current role. And they were looking for someone, they specifically said in their search criteria, and this was a national search, that the person had to have a clinical background in social work or psychology plus a business background. And I think the thing that helped me stand out was the fact that I had the dual degree. I don't know that it would have meant as much otherwise. Why I chose this kind of path, and I think part of it's just who I am as a person. I'm very much trying to figure out how to get things done, and I've never been satisfied with being kind of on the front lines. I like to think of more system things, and I think that's where our degrees in social work help so much, is the whole systems perspective, the systems thinking. People think of it as big picture. That's like what people say in the business world, but it's really systems thinking, and that's what we learn in social work school. In terms of my typical day now, this year has been an amazing year because everything that we deal with, we have most of our funding from the government, so we're dealing with things like cuts in our funding, we're dealing with operational issues, fundraising issues, but at the same time we've made some amazing changes. We, this year, rewrote our mission statement, which is something a nonprofit does not do very frequently. We completely rebranded our organization. We redid our logo, we have a new tagline. We did a video, we redid our website, and we did this in like the toughest economic times possible. But it was so important. I think this is where social workers can really come in and see different opportunities that maybe, our CFO, who has the traditional business background, he's always telling me, well, we can't do that because of the money and this and that. And I'm like, well, we can because we can go and get this and that, and you can. We're very resourceful as social workers. You think about when you work with clients, you have to advocate for them and you have to find the resources to get things done. And I think that's how I think a lot about my job now. My best days are when I'm able to pull something together with our team and find money to allow our staff to go out and meet the needs of our clients more effectively. If we can put up a new program, or we can increase the amount of clients we serve because of the things that I'm doing, that's the best day. And Juan talked about it earlier, whether or not you can find the same kind of passion that you have for working directly with clients in this kind of role. I can't tell you how fulfilling it is. We've recently been able, because of the things we've done operationally, been able to go through, and again, in tough economic times, our staff got bonuses this year. They got 3% increases in their salary. They hadn't been increased in 5 years. And to see how happy, and because our staff are so dedicated, and if we can do things for them, they're going to then go and do better work for our clients. And that's the most important thing. And on that topic, one of the organizations I worked for was a for-profit, publicly traded company that had the best values. I felt so good every day going to work there because from the leadership on down, you felt the mission of that organization. And I have friends that are social workers who love the work that they do in social work, but they hate the organization they work for. And so I think it's always important, no matter where you go, find out what are the values of this place? What do you guys believe in? How are you implementing those and infusing those through your organization? Are you rewarded because you follow the organization's values, or what are they? I mean, are they even written down anywhere? Those are the kinds of things that I don't think make a difference if it's a non-traditional or a traditional role. Finally, I know my time is running out. I think the one kind of, when you're looking for these types of roles, I've actually, partly because I've gotten older, and I have more work experience, but I also think because of the types of jobs I am attracted to, I've completely restructured my resume. So my education is at the bottom of my resume. But at the top of my resume, I have, here are my skills and my areas of expertise. And it includes things like strategic planning. It includes things like call center management. But it also includes things like expertise in clinical assessment, crisis intervention, and all of the social work skills. So instead of going into a prospective employer and saying, hey, I have an MSW, you should hire me, it's like, again, I think Florence talked about it, and it's talking about those skill sets that you bring to the table that no one else does because of the degree you have. And I don't think the degree even matters. We, at Prototypes, I mean, it matters, but you don't have to talk about it. Our HR director is an MSW. Our executive vice president is LCSW and an MBA. And so, of course, we foster that, but I think you get into an organization like that, you gain the experience, and then you can take it elsewhere. So, thank you.
You're working for and getting empowered to do something about it, and also getting exposure, networking, getting exposure to the CEO, getting exposure to the people that are high up in the organization, because they're the people that can actually help make things happen for you, right? So you want to definitely associate with them, so thank you. So now I'd like to introduce our fourth panelist, Neil Rotter. Neil Rotter graduated with a Master of Science in Gerontology, or an MSG, and a Master of Social Work. You know, when I saw the MSG, I'm telling you, I had to look that up.
Chinese food, I know.
Usually MSG is a bad thing.
Just a couple.
With a Master of Science in Gerontology and a Master of Social Work from USC in 1996, he currently serves as the Vice President in Business Development for Accredited Home Health Services, one of the largest privately owned home care companies in the country. In 10 years with Accredited, Neil has contributed to a 500% growth for Accredited. 500%. Overseeing a staff of 12, Neil is responsible for setting and delivering on the marketing priorities at Accredited. Beyond marketing, Neil is a top-rated speaker on a state and national level within the home care community. He strives to improve the quality of home care and health care through his role as Board of Director for the California Association for Health Services at Home. And finally, Neil was named H2's Home Care Marketing Sales Manager of the Year in 2009. Let's give a warm welcome to Neil.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me. Much like Cassandra, when I first looked at social work school, I couldn't even tell you what traditional social work meant. If you want to know my true confession, the only reason I chose to go into social work school, my primary focus at the time was actually my gerontology degree, was if I did a dual degree, it took the same amount of time and I didn't have to write a thesis in gerontology. So I figured, make myself more marketable and get out of that big, like 120-page paper. That was for me, okay? You'll see that with a lot of trends in my business. I try to cut corners and make things happen a little faster. That's just me. A little bit about my current role and what I do. I think Juan hit a little bit of that. I am the Vice President of Business Development, and basically that means my job is to grow the revenue. at our company. We're a private-owned company. Thankfully, the company is not money-driven, but let's face it, at the end of the year, every company in America, the goal is one thing, and that goal is more. More money, more services, more clients, more quality, more is the goal anywhere you go. So that's part of my job, is to get that more. But it's also, I have a unique opportunity and the flexibility to achieve that in a lot of different ways. And I get to be innovative, which is wonderful. Our company was one of the first companies to partner with Philips Electronics in California to offer a service called telehealth, which you'll learn a lot more about in the future. It's basically home medicine, where people are using the internet and connections to give you their blood pressure, their weight, their pulse ox, and you could do a better job of disease management. It's the wave of the future, and I get to do things like that, which is really, really cool. In my job, going back to my gerontology and my social work, now in retrospect, my gerontology did a great job of preparing me for helping older adults in the healthcare industry, which I kind of always felt I was going to be in. I was going to be a pharmacy major, but OChem killed me there. I was going to be a medical student, but again, OChem killed me there. So healthcare, yes, somewhere. But what I learned through gerontology was how to understand my patients and my clients, but what I learned in social work was far more valuable, and that was, how do I reach them, how do I serve them, how do I meet a bigger set of needs. And so every day I go about my job and I look at Vice President of Business Development, and really all I am is a glorified social worker with that title, accomplishing a great goal. And that's wonderful. What do I do on a day-to-day basis? I juggle, like we all do in social work. I juggle business goals, and I juggle the personnel at work who I need their buy-in to help me achieve those goals. And that means that I have to understand their needs and their wants. They want, more, they want more money, they want more input, they want more control, they want more. And I need them. So I have to learn the organizational dynamics, the individual person. I have to learn as a manager to communicate with them, not on my terms, but on what they're going to hear. And that sounds a lot of what we do in our clinical therapy is listen and respond. And that's important. And then I also have to manage and juggle the external influences in our community. Healthcare especially. It's such a changing environment right now, and so many different people think it should be done this way and this way, and there's so many initiatives out there that are constantly changing, and part of my job is to manage all of these things. And I can't help but think, as I look upon my job and how do I accomplish this, that we go back to our internships and we remember our process recordings. Right? And Sheila, my intern over there, who reminded me of that process and how to go through that, it was a good education. But what we do, don't show me the signs yet. So what we do with the process is we identify the problem, we deal with our feelings about it, and we come up with action plans. And with all of these different dynamics with our clients, which sometimes are so great, we do the same thing in our agencies. And hopefully, if we do a good enough job, then we'll be successful with our goals. And that's how I look upon my role, is how do I meet the needs of the community? How do I figure out what patients need what health care and home care services? Is it the developmentally disabled who just got a significant respite cut in California and whose parents now have to look at changing their jobs and their lifestyles to accommodate the need of someone with behavioral developmental disabilities? And what can I do to help that situation? Is it the older adult who is, again, has tons of disease processes going on and can't live independently on their own, but wants to remain in their home? And my ability to successfully meet those needs, given our services, makes a difference in the quality of life. Okay, and that's one of our goals as social workers, is to enhance quality of life. And our other goal is, when I'm able to do that, I take some of that burden off the family, who's sometimes the sandwich generation, or taking care of kids and older adults. So by building services and successfully getting it out there and interacting with people, I get to help quality of life. I get to reduce the family stress and the family dynamics, and that is a wonderful feeling, and it feels good. Okay, and it was my social work training that enabled me to do this. It's really, you should look up there, instead of School of Social Work, I think what's more appropriate is the School of Higher Learning and the School of Business Management, because social work very much is a business. I remember a lot of my coworkers when I went to school, they were getting ready to graduate and none of them knew what they wanted to do. And they said, you know what, I'm just going to open up a private practice. And I thought, hey, that's a great idea. And 6 months later, how's your practice going? Well, I don't really have any clients yet. Okay? Well, why not? Well, I just thought, you know, and this is where Field of Dreams really screwed us all. It's if you build it, they will come. It doesn't really work like that. You kind of have to market it and you kind of have to work at it. So, you know, we all had this false sense, but again, it was kind of learning those skills and taking those skills that we learned in social work, and having COPA, I think, was the greatest thing. I will never forget Sam Taylor's classes where we learned things about marketing and business development and fundraising and grant writing, and why did all of this matter? And it very much does and plays a role in today's world. You know, one of the things about non-traditional social work positions, and when I use that word, for some reason, my brain always says for-profit. Okay, non-traditional equals for-profit. And it doesn't really, but I just keep thinking this in my mind. And I'm a little biased towards for-profit, I will tell you that. Having worked at a nonprofit hospital and doing a great job marketing the geropsych program and reading census numbers that were record numbers, at the end of the year I got a 1% raise. And, you know, the one thing I think as social workers that you really have to do is value what you do. And, you know, I look at people like Julia Roberts, who makes $20 million a film, and some of the social worker colleagues, when they came out of school, were offered jobs at $28,000. I'm like, you know what? We make a hell of a bigger difference on people's lives than movie stars, than baseball players. So I will always encourage you to advocate for yourself and do a better job of understanding what your value is. But the for-profits, going back to that, it really, there's a couple things I see there. Is one, your resources are better. From what I've learned. And, you know, I can only accomplish my job if I'm given the tools to do that. One of the things I'm taught to be as a social worker is resourceful. But again, I need the tools to make that happen, and I've always found that was easier in a for-profit setting. The other thing is I have 2 kids, and one day I hope they go to USC. And to do that, I'm going to need to make a hell of a lot of money. So in the for-profit sector, okay, what you do find is that the compensation sometimes is a lot better, and you're given things like performance bonuses when you really, really do a good job. And so when you're looking out in the community, you know, again, there's wonderful job opportunities out there in the nonprofit and the for-profit. I skew to the nonprofit if you want, or to the for-profit if you want to send your kids here one day and go on nice vacations. But either job you choose, hopefully you find how your your social work role plays a role in the business of helping people, and that's what we're really in. We're in a business of helping people. So Juan gave me the 1-minute mark, and that means I have to get off. But I want to give you a couple of tips as you move forward. And I think we've talked about it, but the number one thing that you always hear about USC is the connections, okay? But I have found 90-something% of people don't use them. The connection does you no good unless you use it, unless you call someone, unless you pester someone, unless you get through that front door. The other thing that I did when I came out of school was I interviewed for the sake of interviewing. I went through the LA Times back when they had a job wanted. Now it's Career Builder. And you know, the indices changed. Cassandra and I are a little older than you. I know, newspapers. But the one thing you should do is go out and interview everywhere for the sake of interviewing. Don't just pigeonhole yourself into thinking that this is what a social worker does. Rather, what I'd like to see you do is change your mentality. Okay? Find a job and then ask yourself, how will my social work training and knowledge enhance my role here, instead of this is what I am and this is what I can do. And if you change that mentality and you go out there, you'll find that really, as Carrie posted up, and I'm not going to go through them, all of those skills are the ideal employee. I have interviewed and hired and fired a lot of people, okay? And a lot of them lack those simple core skills. So as social workers, you have the advantage, but you do have to market yourself. You really have to know that value, advocate for yourself like you would advocate for your clients, and get that first thing. The other last tip that I'm going to give you especially in today's market. You know, you go online and it says don't call, just fax your resume, just email your resume. Call. Always call. Okay? Because in this business, and in any business, the early bird gets the worm. Okay? And if you're proactive and you show that employer that you cared enough, that you went the extra step, okay, they really don't mind you calling. They just don't want to be bombarded with calls. Out of every 100 resumes I receive, one person calls me. Who's the person that gets the first interview? So with that said, enjoy your career process, your path, but take the bull by the horn and make what you have learned work for you rather than, again, putting yourself in this sort of box and assuming this is all I'm capable of. So thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you. And that's the other thing. There's nothing wrong with making money, right? And we should definitely value what we do. Definitely, of course. The other thing I wanted to piggyback on what Neil is saying. I was speaking to, in preparation for the panel I did earlier today, I was speaking to a regional manager of a major staffing firm who's a friend of mine over the weekend. She said exactly that. She said a piece of advice would be, don't send your resume to human resources, right? You know, there's nothing wrong with human resources. I used to work for a staffing and recruiting company. They would always tell us never call human resources. You call the line manager, you call the manager, you call Neil, you know, you call somebody here on the panel, right? And you let them know, because human resources does not have, they don't have the vacant position in front of them, right? They're not feeling the heat. They're not feeling the need to fill that position. Plus, they have a lot of different duties, not just recruiting. So contact directly the department, I think, is a great piece of advice. The other thing I would say, healthcare. Again, in researching aging in healthcare, we have 78 million baby boomers. The youngest one will turn 64 this year, right? So that is slated between 2008 and 2018 to be like the highest growing area. So it's important. I read an NASW study that said the social workers don't want to work with older adults. That's a booming area, so definitely consider that. So our last, definitely not least, panelist is April White Castañeda, and she has worked for the California Institute of Technology, also known as Caltech. Since 1999, she's currently the Senior Director of Employee and Organizational Development for Human Resources there. Her areas of supervision include employee relations, professional development, disability, and workers' compensation. Her previous positions at the Institute include being Director of Staff Education and Career Development and the Director of Consulting Services for the Staff and Faculty Consultation Center. April provides organizational compliance consultation to managers. She educates on issues of distressed employees, work group dynamics, team communication. Work focuses on employee development, human capital, employee retention, and organizational growth. And of course, April has a master's degree in industrial organizational social work, also known as Work and Life Today, from the University of Southern California, and a bachelor's degree, that didn't sound right, and a bachelor's degree from the University of California, UCLA. I thought that was cool. She was an adjunct faculty member for the USC School of Social Work, and she's also worked as a trauma consultant, has a background in student affairs, and has worked for various for-profit and nonprofit organizations. Let's hear for April White Castañeda.
Good evening. All right, let's try it again. Good evening. Good evening. There you go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about maybe some of the things that, look at some of the transferable skills that I use from social work into the position I'm in now. So as Juan told you, I'm in Human Resources for California Institute of Technology. How many of you have heard of Caltech? Just a couple, okay. Maybe have you heard of it as the earthquake place? Right? That's mostly how people know Caltech, that it's the place that we go, you turn the TV on and you see that, you get your number and see what it was on the Richter scale, right? How big was the earthquake? Caltech is actually the MIT of the West Coast and is actually ranked higher than MIT. It's a science and technology engineering school, It focuses purely on, it's mostly research. I say it's really a research institution with a small school attached. There's only 2,000 students at Caltech. There's only 800 undergrads and 1,200 grad students. But there's 5,000 people on campus. There's 2,500 employees who support the work of 300 faculty. And the reason why that ratio is so big to staff to that faculty number is because the kind of work that they're doing takes that kind of human power to put out, the type of research that they're doing. So when I ended up at Caltech is actually, how many of you know Margarita Artavia? Look, let's get fan club. So Margarita was my field liaison, right? And you know, when you get a chance in your second year, you get to say where you want to go intern. And Margarita asked me to interview at Caltech. And I said, no, I don't want to interview at Caltech. And she said, okay, please interview at Caltech. What can I do? She really convinced me. She said, I think you'll really like the field instruction. It was in the employee assistance program. The reason I didn't want to go to Caltech wasn't because of Caltech necessarily. I didn't want to work with clients. I came specifically to the School of Social Work to do industrial organizational social work, and I wanted to do macro practice. I really wanted to work with organizations. I really wanted to do strategic work, organizational development, and I thought if I start working with clients, I'll never go into the area that I want to move in. So, of course, Margarita, in her infinite wisdom, said, I know you're going to love the instructor. As soon as I met the field instructor there, I fell in love with her, and I was like, okay, I have to intern here. So I did end up interning there, and then at the end of my internship, they asked me to stay on. And again, I was obstinate and said no, okay? And they said, please, what would you like to do? I said, well, what I really want to do is work with work groups and work with work teams and do consulting. And they said, okay, if you see some clients, we'll let you do the other half of your job. 50% you see clients and 50% you can do consulting and group work. So I said, okay, you got 2 years. And 10 years later, I'm still at Caltech. So they're starting to think I'm a liar. But really one of the things I think is sort of strange, I guess, about my career path and why I chose to go into social work and then move into organizations is I was never interested in doing an MBA, and the reason why is because I didn't care as much about the numbers. What I wanted to know about was how organizations work from the people perspective. And I felt like if I understood people, then I could help organizations manage better because organizations essentially are people. One of the things you notice is that as many of you, before you even probably came to the School of Social Work, you probably had some jobs that you didn't like. Anybody have a job they didn't like? Yeah, right? And if you think about why you didn't like that job, probably mostly it was because you had a bad manager. People tend to leave managers, they don't tend to leave organizations. People tend to stay at bad organizations if they have a good manager. So really that relationship between the manager and the employee is so critical that I felt like if I learned how to manage that and understand what makes people tick, that I would enjoy what I was doing more, which is absolutely what I use every day in my job. Mostly what I do is work to try and make the organization at Caltech is actually my client. And what that means is I work every day to make sure that the organization is the best it can be for the employees, and the employees are the best they can be for the organization. And right there is where my job is to make those two meld. And so really what I do is look at every day, there's not a day that goes by that I don't use Bandura's theory of triadic reciprocity. Any of you guys remember that from first year? Just a little bit, you guys are like, oh, we don't like Bandura. Right? I'm like, it actually is the most useful for what I do because we look at cognitions, environment, and behavior. And all of those things happen every day in a work group. I use my clinical skills all the time. And for a person who didn't want to do clinical work, I'm really glad that I did because it helps me work with work groups every day. I always look at, and you know, Jessica, who's here, our intern, raise your hand, Jessica. Yay. She knows that we have our meeting, whenever we have our, they're almost like case conferences where we go through employees who are having a difficult time, managers who are not managing their groups well, solving problem solutions. We really, it's very similar to a case conference because what we do is we diagnose the problem, we say what do we think is going on, we look at approach, and we come up with a resolution. And then we have to go back and then communicate that to the manager or the work group or to the employee. So really what ends up happening is you have all this theory and knowledge in your background, but then you have to then translate it into language that folks can understand. And that's really what you do when you're doing therapy. You never sit down with a client and say, well, I think that you're borderline, and let's talk about the other factors that are affecting you. No. So you don't use that language. You know, you end up trying to soften it up, and you know that you're working from, okay, I'm going to create some boundaries in this therapeutic relationship, right? So it's very similar because the organization is the client. So you look at, how do I say this in a way that it can impact the organization, that they'll get it, that they'll understand it, and we still have the outcome of having a healthy group. So it's very similar skills. The other thing you look at is, if you think about all the places that you've worked, people really try to recreate their families of origin in their workplace all the time, okay? How people respond to their managers is often how they responded to their parents. You know, and you're thinking about the times maybe when you've done that, right? Okay? And so you look at all those skills that you learned, especially in that foundation year, and then you think about all the clinical practice that you've done and the theory that you've learned, and you take that and you translate it into a non-traditional setting. When I was interviewed for the job that I have now, my manager asked, why didn't you get an MBA? And I said, because I cared about wanting to know how people functioned. And she has said to me all the time, I'm so glad that we have you, because she did do the MBA, and she says every time we go into a setting, she's lost in terms of what are the dynamics that are going on in the group. What's happening in the group? And I'm always with the, you know, on the side, letting her know, writing that little note, here's how we need to approach it. So it's been a very useful skill set to have that rounds out what people in the organization don't have and they don't feel like they're good at. And I don't think it's no mistake that I ended up at an organization with folks who are very focused on research and probably have less social skills than you might imagine. Yeah. And anyone who's seen the show Big Bang Theory, those are my customers. Every day, right? So they're very happy to have someone who understands facial expressions, you know, understands human dynamics. So I've been able to leverage that in a place that you would not necessarily think a social worker being, but a place that absolutely needs a social worker. And from that, I've then, you know, it's almost in some ways I've had this bias, because as I've hired folks from mental health professions coming into my area. In fact, one was a recent grad from USC School of Social Work who's now in my office. And we leverage those skills every day. So there you have it.
I didn't even show up the last little 1 minute marker. You're good. Wow. I am just really excited to be part of this, because I think we see so many similarities in the things that we do here that we've heard tonight, and so many transferable skills, things that we're doing right now, whether it's in our internship or whether it's in the organizations that we're working with. And how can we translate those, and how can we still utilize, and actually, besides utilize the skills, how can we still work for an organization that has the same mission and still be able to feel good about what we're doing, because we're doing the exact same thing that all social workers love to do, and that's definitely make a difference. So I wanted to thank our panelists here today. This is great to hear so much wisdom, to hear so much advice. So I think we should definitely, let's give our panelists a round of applause. We're going to continue with questions and answers, and actually also a discussion, because we also want to hear some feedback from all of you. And Carrie is going to be running around with the microphone. Let's go ahead and start it.
I want to thank you all very much. Yeah, it made me feel even better, because I've been doing real estate for the past year, property management. And I know in the meetings, like the off-site managers and the on-site managers and the owners look mad at each other, and so I like calm them down. But I guess learning the numbers is helping me a lot too. So,
Can everybody hear?
Can you hear me? Did you hear that? Well, I was just kind of sucking up but telling them the truth. No, it's the truth. I realized learning the numbers and commute, so I didn't realize I was doing social work, but I guess I'm doing it. So that's really helpful. So I just wanted to thank you. And there's something else I was going to say. One of my best friends works for Deloitte. He's an actuary. He loves it, so I'd love to talk to you afterwards about that. There was something else I was... Oh, I just had a joke, but you said, Neil, you said it's about making money, but now that I'm doing real estate, I know it's not because you want to show that you lost money every year. And April, you're going to build a rocket ship because now that there's funding. But seriously, you guys made me realize that it's not just the room like you talked about, people communicating, like learning these business numbers is actually making me more marketable. And so, and if you know, oh, I had one question for you guys, that was it. Since you're making all these that was what I wanted to say. Since you're making all these connections for internships, are you going to try to do the same things for graduates? Because I graduated in May last week.
Well, originally that was our focus, is to create jobs, but because of the state of the economy right now, it's really tight and they're laying off some of their own employees that's been employed for many years, we decided to try to go the internship route. So we're still doing both, but you know, even like with some of the finance companies, like I think it was with Union Bank one, right? They love the idea, but they're like, let me float it past my bosses. It might not be a good time right now. And I said, well, that's okay. You know, we'll wait. You know, just float it, and when it's time to go, we're ready to go. So we're looking in that realm. So we want you to join us. We want you to be prepared. So when the market gets better, that we'll be in the forefront.
If I can also add something else, also for people who've already graduated, make sure you pick up one of those pieces of paper, the handouts, and there are a lot of transferable skills on there that you can utilize for your own resume and incorporate those, because again, if you're going to be doing something non-traditional and they don't know what a social worker does, being able to utilize some of those, highlight some of those skills and connect the dots for them as well, I think that's going to be a big help as well. Another question or comment? Thank you.
A lot of you talked about being like trailblazing, being like the only MSW in the industry, but do you see other MSWs besides yourself in your industry? Or, just to give some for us as we're searching out there, are you guys like the only ones, or a small minority?
Did everybody hear the question?
I'll jump in because that's just how I am. In home health care, and in the health industry, especially in the business development and marketing end, you don't see a lot of social workers. Once in a while you'll see a nurse, but very rarely is it actual clinicians that are marketing a very clinical service, such as home care, even physician marketing and stuff. You never see a nurse or a physician's assistant. So there definitely is an area in the business development and marketing side where social workers can utilize all of these skills to grow. It goes back to, again, social work is a business, whether it's healthcare, whether it's social services, whether it's selling products. It all has the same theory and the same approach to making that organization grow and successful. So again, take the business you want to do and apply your social work degree and experience to that, and hopefully that'll work for you.
Can you hear me? So what I was going to say is that there are social workers everywhere. We're kind of like roaches. When you turn the light on, we run out.
Did she say we're kind of like roaches? Is that what you...
We're strong. We try to keep from getting stomped.
Glorified roaches.
What I have found is sometimes you have to ask people, because especially when social workers move into non-traditional fields, they drop off the MSW because people don't understand what it is. And so there are folks who are out there, and there's even been vendors that I've worked with, I found it's kind of like the secret society. Oh yeah, I have an MSW. So you do end up, there are folks out there, but you do have to ask sometimes.
Oh my gosh, this is heavy. It's also quite heavy. Okay,
I need to work out more.
It's a real good microphone, that's why.
Yeah, I think so. It's like a statue. I think to Neil's point about healthcare, I think there's so much opportunity there. And when I worked for Pacific Care for about 6 years, and then United Healthcare bought us, and I worked for that organization for about a year. And although many people got into the organization working in more clinical roles in the behavioral health division, I could have gone into sales, I could have gone into marketing, because once you learned the fundamental service that we were providing, who's better to go and sell it to customers? And I had many colleagues and friends that went into things like account management, because some of our most high-profile clients were in the entertainment industry, and so they'd call up to their account manager when they had a problem, someone wasn't getting the services they need. Wasn't it great that they were able to speak to a clinician on the other end of the phone? And so I think if you can learn, and that's why I say I never felt like I was a non-traditional social worker, because I went into these organizations, I learned what service we were providing, and then I went and got different jobs because I understood that service.
Within corporate community relations, government affairs, when I'm out there, I get to meet a lot of my peers from other companies, and honestly, I have not run into a lot of MSWs. They're more, like I said before, communications types, PR types, or MBAs, or people who just kind of rose through the ranks within that industry. But if I'm out there and I tell people that I'm an MSW and I'm a social worker, the responses that I get from others, it's always positive. It's always an eyebrow raise saying, it makes sense. And so that's why I say I think there's such an opportunity for social workers to enter this field. And because the industry or that this area is growing, and because there's such in my mind, a perfect match between the skill sets the social workers have and what skills are necessary to be successful in these types of roles. I think even though there are no other MSWs, it's not heavily populated, there's great opportunity.
I would also, I'm sorry, Margot.
I didn't want to answer because the answer is kind of no. Although I don't know if I turn the lights on who I'd find, but the exact same point, which is that's why I wanted to highlight the field of social enterprise, because it's a very growing and somewhat nascent field, and it's dominated by MBAs right now, and to that matter, like white MBAs. So it's kind of like I'm saying we need to get out there and be part of these teams that are developing innovative solutions to poverty, to injustice, sustainable models that have earned income revenue attached, but they need the social work mind, because you see these MBA minds toiling with what's the solution, but they haven't necessarily explored the problem as well as I think social workers can get into the depth of what are the roots of what's driving people and what are the connected issues, connected issues.
So again, it makes sense, and it's funny, those exact words, Carrie and I have had the privilege, this is so fun, we talk about these informational interviews, that's what Carrie and I are doing, and we get a chance, we've talked to over 60 employers in the last 8 months, and that's exactly what they say. It makes sense. Wow. It's not that I never wanted to interview a social worker, but I just never did. It makes sense. That's why we need to educate and we need to connect the dots and let people know what we can do, because it does make sense. It does make sense. This is also, I don't know if this is anybody's, we found this. If it is, if you find it, if I already found it. If it's yours. If it's yours, or after like 10 minutes, if you want it. No, I'm kidding. Let us know. We have it up here for you. I haven't checked inside, so I don't know what's in there. So, and another question or comment.
I had a two-part question, possibly.
Can you speak into the mic, please?
Okay, I'm kind of piqued at some of the things you said about foundational business skills. Maybe is there a non-traditional way of getting your MBA or MBA skills? And maybe is there a program or a certification that you may know of, if you don't want to necessarily go into an MBA program? And then the other part that I am fluent in American Sign Language, so I'm always looking for opportunities to use my skill set. Have you found that as a need for people who are deaf or hard of hearing?
Well, I can answer on alternative ways to get those skills because we're developing an awesome new model through the Society and Business Lab. You might have to hang on a few months because it's in prototype right now, but we're developing an online learning program for early stage social entrepreneurs, and many of you would be the perfect target for this because you've been out in the field, you've seen that maybe the organizations you've worked with are just kind of following the same old pattern, and if you have new ideas or models that you want to implement, we will take you through a feasibility analysis, which is basically what leads you to a business plan with structure around that. So that's kind of a little plug, but I would also say the business skills are kind of like social work skills where they run the gamut. If managerial skills are different than entrepreneurial skills, which are different than marketing, which are different than finance. So you don't have to necessarily get them all. If you know if you can assess how your mind works and then just sometimes it's just learning the language, because what I saw in the social work degree was I was learning the exact same process, but calling it something different. So what is a business plan in business is a program proposal in social work. So learn the language and you might already have a lot of the skills you need.
Not to put down Pepperdine, but I don't think I needed my MBA at all. I learned very little there. I think it was great for networking, and I learned almost everything because when I was in a situation and I didn't know something, I found someone who did. And I completely agree with you. With the exception of finance, everything that we learned in social work school, whether it's marketing a program versus marketing a business, it's the same kind of thinking. It was called something different. I struggled with finance, so I found people who I consider mentors to this day. I'm like, okay, walk me through a balance sheet. What does all of this mean? And I'm not going to ever be a CFO, but I can follow the conversation when I'm in the room, and I can ask questions if something looks weird. And so I think there's a lot of different ways that you can go about it. And there's actually some great books out there, like very basic, like finance books for non-financial managers that can walk you through this stuff.
I was also going to say, again, how to get these skills, and I'm going to actually ask all of you a question to see how this might work. If you're in an internship or if you're in your job, you're already out working in your job, why not ask whoever you can, whether it's the administrator, let me see if I can do something in business development, in marketing, in finance. Can I get some exposure to get my feet wet? So we're talking about how can we get these skills without having to get an MBA. You're already in that organization. They already know you. They trust you. And my question to the panel would be, if you had somebody who wanted to get more exposure to one of these departments, how would you react to a question like that, a request like that?
This is a very, actually, to me, really important point, because there are a number of things that I actually learned on my job by working on cross-functional teams. So there's things I learned that I never thought I wanted to know about that ended up helping so much. And one of those would be even just looking at, it's really important at Caltech in terms of managing systems, managing technology, and managing computer systems and how they run, and working on some cross-functional teams and working on those projects where I was coming in to do a specific role, like to do training, but then working with the folks who were the developers and the analysts and who would talk about what they do. It was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense to me now. And just volunteering to be on those kinds of projects, work in those groups, volunteering to bring something that you have a skill to the table and say, you know what, I got some time, I'll do this for you, and then you start to learn other parts of the business.
When I asked my staff a couple of years ago at an all-staff meeting, who here is part of the marketing department, the business development department, only the 12 people that I supervised raised their hands. But the reality is everybody at every company is part of the business development team, because an organization grows not only by who out there is marketing, beating down the doors, drumming up business, but by the customer service, by the problem resolution that happens. That's the real mark of a good company. It's not how well I sell it on the front door, but it's how well we deliver it on the back door. So as you go into these organizations and you want to be part of the business development team, you now learn that, and you learn, one of my roles in addition to building the business is training my staff how to answer the phone politely. Okay? Seriously, we take it for granted, but when you're in business, the first image of that agency is the person that answers the phone, and how well they know how to transition you to the person who you need to speak to. You know, it's not, so those skills are also important. Social worker, you can do, I think a big opportunity for the future, if you want to look at a career profession, is really customer service training and in-house training of staff at every company. I promise you, every company needs to learn how to do a better job of customer service and communication with their clients.
And let me add to that. I think there are a lot of companies out there, for-profit companies, that really focus their resources and invest a lot of resources on talent development, or what we call leadership development. So for example, at Target is a company that is not only committed to community, but very committed to talent and leadership development. So if you end up at a company that is focused on that, then that just opens the floodgates for you to learn other skills, take on other projects within different departments. So let's say you're in assets protection, but you can go work a project with in the marketing department or in the merchandising department. And so when you're looking for a job, I would encourage you to explore that company's values and whether they focus on leadership development. So because there are a lot of companies that, companies get awards for these types of things, for being really friendly to mothers or being innovative, and companies will strive to provide a work environment that's flexible for their employees to work different projects to hone their skills. So I would say look for companies, and when you're interviewing, ask them what their leadership development or talent development programs or process looks like, and then you can assess whether that's a company that is open to teaching you and encouraging mentorship between departments so that you can acquire the skills that you're looking for through mentors and through other projects, on-the-job training, without having to spend a lot going to get another degree.
And the thing that I would add, I would be thrilled if anyone came and asked me to help work, because, Neil was so right that really the only thing I miss about the for-profit world, sometimes I miss the money, but I mostly just miss the resources, because you had the resources to get things done, and you don't have that in the nonprofit world. But I will say that the one thing I noticed that is very different between my traditional social work jobs and my non-traditional ones, you have to be willing to put in the time, because you're playing now with a whole different group of people. And if you're competing against an MBA who's willing to go to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, you're competing against someone who is actually making a lot less money on an hourly basis than maybe their salary reflects. And I think even if you can put that time in for a brief period of time, I know quality of life is important. It does pay off in the end, because people are interested in people who are willing to not work just 9 to 5. If you have to be out the door every single day, but there's a crisis or something's happening in the organization and you can't stay, it does become a problem in some of these roles that we're talking about.
Thank you very much. Well, we're looking at the time. Wanted to thank our panelists again, Florence, Margot, Cassandra, Neil, April, for the insights, for letting us know that so many things that that we all do, they do, and it's just a little bit different, and we can definitely do it. So I wanted to and also thank all of you for being here, but I wanted to invite Carrie for some closing remarks.
Again, thank you very much. Thank you to the panelists. It's so good to see you and so good to have you join us. We enjoyed every minute of what you had to say and insightful, and I'll take it into consideration too in my next job search. Uh-oh, it's being taped. I'm sorry. Just kidding. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. As you could tell by the tremendous response, we had students that were coming and going from classes because we have this weird class schedule now where classes start at 7 and they go to 10 and different kinds of schedules, so it was hard to get everyone here at this time. But we thank you. We thank you for going down this road with us. We thank you for being open to it because we think there's lots of opportunity. We don't know where it's going to lead, but we want to hear from you. We want to continue to shape this, and we thank you for being here. Oh yeah. So 2 more things. Where is it? Oh, just kidding. Anyways, just kidding. The LinkedIn profile, go to LinkedIn so we could continue the discussion. And we have a raffle for alumni, and we have 3 raffle prizes. And Wendy Chu, she's our treasurer from the Social Work Alumni Association. She's going to help us. No, you don't look in the bag. Just pick one.
So for the LinkedIn group.
Wait, up here.
My bad. Thank you. I like talking too. For the LinkedIn group, how many here are already on LinkedIn have a profile? Great. Okay. So if you're not, get on LinkedIn, create your profile. Carrie has designed or actually signed up and created a discussion group. It's called Social Work or Non-Traditional USC Non-Traditional Social Work. Go to the Groups tab, do a keyword search. It'll pull up. Join it, and we can continue to continue this conversation, et cetera, and participate in the discussion group. All right, so I guess I'm calling out the first winner. All right, we have Marcy K.
Okay, we didn't have any final jokes besides Juan doing his thing, but but thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.